All right. Shalom. First and foremost, want to begin by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakak, Wadash, double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there. And as always, you believers. So yeah, I'm back once again through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. And you already know what it is. As always, the focal point being Bible prophecy, which pretty much features the year of our Lord and his coming kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, which will be the next government, if you will, to be established right here on the planet Earth. And you can read about that in the book of Revelation, the 5th chapter, and the 10th verse, and plenty of other scriptures that support the idea of the world to come, the kingdom of heaven, in which we understand, those of us in the know, those of you who can vibe to the song, if you will, that in no wise will two kingdoms coexist here on the planet Earth. Now, when you go back in history, you did have a case of the Media-Persia Empire, where you had the Medes and the Persians to pretty much coexist. But when you read Daniel, the 7th chapter, I want to say around the 5th verse, it tells you how one kingdom rose up on its side. And that means that was symbolic pretty much to the Persian Empire being elevated over the Medes. So that's the closest, if you will, as it relates to two kingdoms coexisting. So when you fast forward to now, this current beast system governed over by Esau, the so-called white man, will have to be moved out of the way. Again, if the kingdom of heaven is set to be established, then in no wise will you have wickedness and righteousness to coexist. That stark contrast, so to speak. In no wise will Jacob and Esau coexist. Meaning what? The ushering in of the kingdom of heaven will be at the removal of this current system, in which that that transition of power, which will be cemented, the exclamation point will be the destruction, will be considered one of the many works of the Most High. Look, if you speak to one of these wacky-tacky Christians, which we don't encourage, right? Look, we only debate our equals. We don't debate, pretty much. When I say debate our equals, that's when we reason amongst one another, right? Scriptures say, in correction, rebuke, and long suffering. So we don't consider you Christians, but for argument's sake, if you was to present the idea of the wondrous works to one of these Christians and tell them to expound on it, you give them a pad and a paintbrush and say, look, illustrate the wondrous works of the Most High. They're going to paint the sun, right? Soft, white, puffy clouds. They might throw a rainbow in there. A damn picket fence, maybe. Which, you know, when you consider the things that you can see tangibly, yeah, of course, all these creations will be attributed to the works of the Most High. But for those of us in the know, we understand even scenarios are included, which falls under the umbrella, if you will, of the works of the Most High. The destruction, World War III, to be exact, that's a wondrous work of the Most High. Matter of fact, before we get into this lesson, let's begin real quick. I want to say that's Second Chronicles. It might be First Chronicles. Let's see. Yep, it's First Chronicles, the 16th chapter, and we're going to begin right here at the 8th verse. It reads, give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the people. Make known his deeds, or in other words, his works among the people. Now, what we read in here is another case of Romans 15:4, as it is written, the things written aforetime was written for our learning, so that we, through comfort and patience of the scriptures, might have hope. So what we're reading is an actual account right here in First Chronicles, which when you go, yep, this is dealing with when the ark was returned. And David was real excited about the ark being returned to Israel. And he placed it in a tent. And when you go into that account, is a foreshadowing of now. If you're spiritual, you put your spiritual thinking caps on and view things through spiritual lenses. What do I mean this was a foreshadowing? Well, when you go into this account, King David, he was celebrating the return of the ark into the tent, which spiritually that even represents Yahushua being the ark, and returning to the tent, the house of David. But what was the act that David committed? He performed in his celebration. He fed the multitude. He fed the men and women. He fed everybody. I believe he fed them with bread and wine. See? So that account is a foreshadowing of now. Because the Lord gave us the onus, we was delegated to do that very same thing, to continue in that legacy. As the ark is being returned to the tent, the response is what? To feed the people. That's the celebratory act that comes behind the Lord's favor being returned. See? So let's pick it up right here again. It says, give thanks unto the Lord, right? Because again, when David fed everyone, this is what he proclaimed. Look, give thanks to the Most High. And we come in that same legacy. See, give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name. See? Make known his deeds among the people. So we doing that now. And which again, deeds translates to works. It says, sing unto him, sing psalms unto him, take ye of all his what? Wondrous works. See? It says, glory ye in his holy name. Let their heart, Salakia, let the heart of them rejoice that seek the Lord. And again, obviously, this applies to you believers today. If you truly and sincerely seek after the Lord, you earnestly seek the Lord, then what? Your heart is rejoicing. Because the Lord is now quieting those grumblings. He's pretty much giving us clarity where we once lacked vision. He's given us hope where we was once destitute of that. Our universe centered around America, man. Picture that. But now we have been given that slither of hope, that exit out of this realm by way of the door, Yahushua. And that's pursuant to St. John, the 10th chapter. See, verse 11, seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his face continually. Seek his face continually. And there's a few words that jump out here, seek, because you're supposed to be, all of us, we in pursuit of Yahushua. See, it says his strength, and that's going to be needed in the times that we closing in on, the time of great evil. And it says continually we are to seek his face. So once you're introduced to this form of teaching, in no wise should you draw back. You go back into the world, you seek to save your life, meaning you go after different opportunities, and really you're driven by your own lust. For those who came into this thing and for whatever reason you drew back and went into the world, it was due to your own lust. See? So one of the clauses in the contract is for you to seek his face continually. Now, this is a dark saying, obviously, because we're not physically seeking the face of the Lord, looking for the Lord to peek out from behind the clouds. What does it mean to seek his face continually? Real quick, let's go here to the book of Wisdom of Solomon. The 7th chapter and the 25th verse, I want to say. The point is the 26th verse, but we'll start right here in the 25th verse. It reads, for she is the breath of the power of the Most High, and that she is dealing with wisdom, this nurturing spirit. You see, it says, and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no undefiled thing fall into her. So if you undefiled, and we touched on this over the weekend at camp, if you're one of those stones that have been compromised, right? What's that? Exodus, the 20th chapter, where the Most High said he requires stones which have not been hewn and which the tool have not been laid upon. So if your spirit has a blot or a stain, then it's considered defiled. See? And if that applies, then in no wise will you fall into these riches. So this is why your favorite uncle can't quite wrap his mind around it. You try to explain it to one of your contemporaries at work, an old friend or loved one, and they can't get it, well, that's an indicator that they will be defiled. You see? Verse 26, and this is the point. It says, for she is the brightness of the everlasting light, the unspotted mirror of the power of the Most High, and the image, in the image of his goodness. And that goodness is this truth. So a reflection of the Most High is manifest through this truth. And that's a way out concept. You have to walk in the light, in the spirit, to digest such an idea. See? Because if you operate in the flesh, then now you want to see some tangible sign. You'll read this scripture and stumble at it. See that? Right? You might see a cloud forming in a certain image. Oh, that's right. No, the image of the Most High manifests through this word. Let's read this again. For she is the brightness of the everlasting light, the unspotted mirror of the power of the Most High. See, wisdom is a reflection of the Most High. See? And the image of his goodness. See? So when you go back here again to 1 Chronicles, the 16th chapter, and again, the 11th verse, it reads, seek the Lord and his strength, seek his face or his wisdom continually. So you got to endure until the end. You can't remain for a season or abide for a season. We all have to continue to the end. And even when you consider that, it's the Most High who keeps you. See? So we completely at the mercy of Yahweh Shema Shai. Absolutely. Verse 12, it says, remember his marvelous works that he have done, his wonders, and the judgments, and the judgments of his mouth. Let's read this again. Remember his marvelous works that he have done, his wonders. And again, if you was to throw a sheet of paper, a canvas, and a paintbrush to a Christian and say, look, jot or illustrate the wondrous works of the Lord. They're going to paint the sun, a cloud, and a rainbow emanating out of it. See? But it goes far beyond those works. How do we know? Let's read on. It says, and the judgments, and the judgments of his mouth. So this is how the Lord execute his judgment. It's initiated by the prophets. And then what happens? The flood. The takedown of Nineveh in the time of Jonah. The sacking of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And in this case, the destruction, the overthrow of America is preceded by what? His mouth. Real quick, let's see what this word judgment give us. The Hebrew word that being mashapat. It says judgment, justice. See, and that's a key word there. Because judgment is not some random act. It's an act of justice. It's pretty much a course correction. So this is how we know the judgment that we promote through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai is fitting for the time we're in. Because Esau, the so-called white man, has contaminated everything. Basically, he has set a hard stance against righteousness. All of his legislations, if you pay attention, they're in direct conflict with the law. And if you attempt to keep the law, you demonized. I challenge any of you to go out there and put a homosexual to death, which that's in the law. guess what? The so-called white man is going to judge you 7 times over. See? Or even speaking righteousness, standing for righteousness in a time of universal deceit is pretty much a revolutionary act. See? Why? Because wickedness is in power. We're in a time of gross darkness. So if one stands for light, then now you have made yourself an enemy. Oh, and that's pursuant to the book of Isaiah, the 59th chapter, which this is all more and more of an indictment on the so-called white man. See? It says judgment, justice, ordinance. See, judgment was set up to set up order, man. So the destruction is not just some random act, a barbaric act of the Most High. There's a science behind it. And we're going to get into that, as you can see, as you all can see the title of this lesson, the chief method of execution. We're going to see what that is as it relates to the scriptures. It's that fire. Because that's going to be the cleansing agent to cleanse the earth, to set about justice and ordinance. Everything is going to be made right side up at the destruction. See, judgment, act of deciding a case. See, this is how the Lord is going to get to the bottom of things with the destruction. See, place, court, seat of judgment. See that? So the destruction ain't some random act. There's a science behind it, which that word science simply goes back to knowledge. Nothing deep about it. So the destruction is a wondrous work of the Most High that's brought forth through the act of wisdom. That's going to be wisdom on display. And this is only for, I'm going to throw this out there, man. This is a disclaimer, right? This is not for the casual Israelite. Respectfully speaking, this is for the serious-minded who operate, who see things through spiritual lenses, as it were. See? The destruction is wisdom on display. That's going to be wisdom on display. One of the highest forms of wisdom. Again, it's going to serve as a course correction. Matter of fact, real quick, let's prove that. That's in the book of Psalms 104. And that's the spirit. I didn't know that this was the head in here. The Lord's care over all his works. Right? And that word care is not designated to the emotional, this westernized, I care for you. Right? When you care for something and you polish it up, you tend to it. If I destroy you, I tended to you. That was a certain care. See? I considered it. So you're going to find out the ways of the Most High is out there. So let's see. I know it's in Psalms 104. Yep, right here in Psalms 104 and 24. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 104 and verse 24. It says, "O Lord, how manifold are thy works." So the works of the Lord is not reduced to just the creations you could physically see. No. Scenarios, the way things are formulated and play out, that's a work of the Most High. Right? We hear of judgment. Someone, they wake up, they go about their day-to-day, they go about their routine, they shower, shave, leave the house, go get a latte, right? And make a right, make a left, and bam, their car is wrapped around a pole. That's a work of the Most High. It's like the stroke of the paintbrush, and the last final portrait is you being sprawled out. So it's no different as it relates to kingdoms and empires. And in particular, and that's what's on the table, America. Remember, we was commanded and ordered to set our face against Mount Seir, the so-called white man and his kingdom. So really, everything is a build-up in a sense, especially when you look back in retrospect to this man and his pursuit to coming into power. All of those different works from the different wars he engaged in, Those were strokes of the paintbrush. And the final portrait is going to be America on fire, man. And who orchestrates that work? Yahweh Shema Shai. Let's read it again. It says, "O Lord, how manifold are thy works." See, which manifold goes into what? Many, different, diverse. Check it out. Now listen good. It says, "O Lord, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom hast thou made them all." See? In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. Let's read this again. "O Lord, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom, see, hast thou made them all." So the destruction, which is a work of the Lord, was made in wisdom. That's going to be an act of wisdom. Let's click on this word works. Ma'asha. It says deed, work, deed, thing, done, act. See? The destruction is an act. That's done in wisdom. See? Work, labor, business, pursuit, undertaking, enterprise, achievement, deeds. Oh, look, deeds, works of deliverance and judgment. See that? Works of deliverance and judgment, which in its perfection will manifest when those missiles hit. That's when you're going to see the deliverance, because it's going to be complemented by judgment. But again, what's the point? It says, all thy works are what? In wisdom. So deliverance and judgment is an act of wisdom. That's wisdom on display. See? And again, it's a science behind that work of the destruction. It's not just some barbaric act. No, the destruction going to clean the air. It's going to clean the water. It's going to shake the earth. We're going to get into that as well. Because when you shake something, you clean it. Matter of fact, what's that? Let me get this real quick, y'all. Isaiah. Because when the Lord shake up the earth, continents going to come out of the water. All type of land is going to be added. The Lord going to destroy one land and bring up other continents, because we're going to be enlarged. Israel going to be enlarged. You're going to see continents come up and take place. The Lord is going to shape and mold a new reality to facilitate the kingdom. See, it's not going to look the same. Like China. Man, fuck China. It's going to be certain parts of China hit. See? Edom, all the portion that was given to Edom, that earthquake going to make it cleave to Israel. Our land going to be expanded. See? This is the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter. Is that? Let me see. Yep. This is Isaiah 14. And let's start at the 22nd verse. It reads, For I will raise up against them, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant and son and nephew, saith the Lord. And that's King's language. The Lord is saying, look, I'm going to assure that the so-called white man will never come into power again. Because when you go into ancient kings, they're assured their throne by what? Setting up their son after them, or either their nephew. But the Lord said he's going to cut off son and nephew, right? But how are he going to do it? He said he's going to rise up against them. How the Lord going to rise up when the missiles come out of those silos? That's going to be the Most High rising up against them. See? And you can read about that. That's in Sirach 36. I will raise up indignation and pour out destruction. Verse 23, this is the point. It says, I will also make it a possession of the Birchim and pools of water, hence your lake of fire. So the Lord said he's going to make America pools of water, and I will sweep it, see, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, saith the Lord. So when you sweep something, you clean it. See that? So the destruction, there's a science to it. It's going to cleanse the filth of the earth. You got nano organisms you can't see. This devil got metals that's entering into your system, and you dying by 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 cuts. See, the soil is completely defiled. It runs deep with the blood of Israel. And not only that, you got Monsanto's, you got chemicals being sprayed on the earth. See? Again, the water. These devils, right? For an example, they came up with the bright idea because they understand the science and the importance behind coral reefs. So they noticed that the ocean was losing a lot of reefs, and that also contributed to the throwing off of the ecosystem because those reefs, they house different fish and sea life. So they said, look, we're gonna make new reefs. And guess what the bright idea they came up with to create reefs? Tires. Literal rubber tires, man. You can look it up, man. Information out there. They use tires as the foundation to set up reefs. So you got a child in power, the sword, who's contributing to cutting off life in the earth. So the destruction is going to come with a certain wisdom to it. It's going to be the physician at work. There's going to be that chemo to cut off the germs and the cancer and overall perverseness of Esau, the so-called white man, the curse, as the scriptures liken him to. See? So the chief method in which the Lord is going to bring about to get rid of this filth is the destruction, which again is going to manifest in the form of fire. Now, real quick, I just did a simple Google, which we know fire is a cleansing agent, but I found this to be spiritual because they didn't even have to provide this definition. Now, check this out. It says, yes, fire purifies physically by destroying germs. And in this case, that germ would be Esau. It says melting away metal impurities. And that's also dealing with Esau. And again, we're viewing this through spiritual lenses because in no wise can you say that this is not in harmony with what the scriptures say. Matter of fact, let me get some because that word melting popped out. Is that the book of Psalms? Yep, Psalm 58. And starting at the 6th verse, it says, break their teeth, O Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, and their mouth break out the great teeth of the young lions, O Lord. And we know that's dealing with Esau. In this case, he's referred to as young lions because a young lion is curious and ultimately he's poised to go to war. He has a certain vigor. See? Verse 7 says, let them melt away, let them melt, see, away as waters which run continually. And how are these waters going to be brought about? You know, that lake of fire, which is going to cause them to melt. Let's read on. It says, when he bendeth his bow to shoot his arrows. That's too plain. It says, let them be as cut in pieces. So you can see where, again, this definition, hey, it's spiritual. See? Yes, fire purifies physically by destroying germs, melting away metal impurities. It says, and clearing ecological decay. Culturally and spiritually, it serves as a universal symbol of transformation. Can't make that up. Because this is what the destruction is going to bring about. Transformation. See? We know what this word going into, but you know it's custom here at Great Millstone. Check it out. Transformation is a complete or major change in form, shape, character, or appearance. The earth is going to undergo a heavy transition. It says because the word applies to many different areas, it can mean a geometric shape change. You can apply that. A biological process, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. Yep, a metamorphosis. or a digital shift in a business. That's spiritual right here, man. Because the Lord referred to Jake as worms, which a caterpillar is a worm, and a caterpillar it undergoes a metamorphosis and it changes to a butterfly, take flight. It elevates. So let's go back here to this definition. It says culturally and spiritually, dealing with fire, it serves as a universal symbol of transformation, judgment, see, and spiritual cleansing. And in this case, that cleansing is going to be cleansing the earth. This is how Yahweh Shema Shai is going to go about that. And the only way the earth can be cleansed is through that fire, because of the so-called white man's wickedness, right? Everything he contributed to the earth was basically a symbol of taking a hard stance against the Most High and serving as a oppositional force. See, the rebellion of Esau, the so-called white man, has provoked that fire. Because when you go into the law, for an example, when you go into the law, right? What does the law say about a witch? Let's get it. That's in the book of Leviticus. Because what you got to realize about the scriptures, the Most High is perfect in all his works, and he don't have to go back and adjust nothing, man. That's why everything is recorded and documented. So the Lord can point to certain accounts in the scriptures, which comes with different judgments, right? Different laws and ordinances, which has penalties. So he don't have to go and say, you know what, since America here, let me go and make a quick on the fly, let me create another book dedicated. No, we can go into the writings in the scriptures, and of course through the spirit it have to be qualified, right? That's where discernment comes in. But those of us in the know, we understand even when you go into the law, this applies even to this very day, right? So when you go right here, now this is a law concerning a priest and his daughter. So it reads, and the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by wet playing the whore, which America has played the whore. America's a harlot. Matter of fact, we're going to get into that as well, right? It says, and the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profaneth her father, she shall what? Be burnt with fire. So hold up. If the Lord said the priest's daughter got to be burnt, how much more America, man? Which America is a whore. Let's go there real quick. So the point also is the Lord recorded that for a reason. So if the Lord said, look, the priest's daughter played a part of a whore, right? The penalty is to burn her. Why would he turn around and call America a whore? See? Because it's recorded in the scriptures what he does in those events. So he didn't have to go back and adjust the scriptures. Let's get that. Nahum, the 3rd chapter. And starting at the 1st verse, it says, Nineveh's complete ruin. And this is spiritual for America. It says, woe to the bloody city. It is full of lies. That's dealing with America. Woe to the bloody city. It is full of lies and what? Robbery. The prey departed not. And who is the prey? That's you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. So now if you paying attention, if you have eyes to see, you can see where this is clearly dealing with America. In another case of the Lord, don't have to go back and write a quick letter or record a document to facilitate America. See? It says the noise of a whip and the noise of the rattling of wheels, right? That's these cars. It says, and the prancing horses and the jumping chariots, right? Because you have hydraulics up in, you can't make that up, man. Right? Jake was having them cars with the hydraulics. They still got it. Jumping chariots, man. So this is a strange setting over here in America, Babylon the Great. It says, the horsemen lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain and great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpse. They stumble upon their corpses. Yeah, because this is the valley of the shadow of death. And guess what? You're going to see why. Oh, the Spirit got on me to go into that few videos back. Well, I believe the latest live I did through the Spirit. Well, you're going to see why America was coined as the valley of the shadow of death. As we see these pestilence begin to blossom in their beauty, there's more recalls. And there was a disturbing report came out that America is really teetering towards a famine of epic and biblical proportions, man. Food shortages, scarcity, resources, power outages. And that's going to bring forth what? The wild beasts. They're going to change their place. You're going to see marauders. Homes is going to be searched out with the sword. You can read about that in the second Ezra, the 16th chapter. So it was no coincidence the Lord coined America, Babylon the Great, as the valley of the shadow of death. See? Verse 4, and now the Lord is about to give you the reason why he's going to visit America with these great evils. It says, because of the multitude of what? The whoredoms. See? Because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot. So we read in the law where the scriptures say that even the priest's daughter, if she played a part of a whore, she got to be burnt with fire. There's no rehabilitating that. So why was that coined? Yeah, for many reasons, honestly, but for us to consider even now, that's why the Lord called America the whore. So now she got to suffer the judgment of a whore, which is to be burnt with fire. See, it says, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, see, that sell of nations through her whoredoms, see, and families through her witchcrafts. So Yahweh Shem Yahushua is giving you the science behind bringing that fire. See, it's to cleanse the aftermath of this whore, all the filth that she left behind, man. See? Which you can look no further than the scriptures. So there's a science behind it. The Lord, we just read in the law, where the Lord said, look, burn even a priest's daughter if she commit whoredoms. So now you think America is not going to be burnt when she's the well-favored harlot, see, and the mistress of witchcraft, in which that witchcraft really represents her rebellion. Let's get that. What's that? 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 15. Yep, this is 1 Samuel 15 and 23. It says, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness, see, is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he have also rejected thee from being king. So we know this is another example of things written aforetime, written for our learning, and another case of the Most High not having to go and adjust the scriptures. Everything is written within the scriptures for us to look to, and ultimately the wise amongst the people to consider. And this is where we come in, humbly speaking. The Lord gave us the spirit to make sense of Yahweh Shai, as it were. So we was given the power to decipher, which that word decipher, heavy. It pretty much means to break the circle. Cipher means a circle. And D means you break, you penetrate it. So the scriptures was bound. You can read about that in Revelation 5, where John wept bitterly because no man was found worthy to open the book, seeing that it was sealed. But now we're in a time where the seals are loosed. So we can make sense of these scriptures. So this applies to now. See? For rebellion is the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. This is all on display in America. Stubbornness, iniquity, idolatry. Idolatry, this is the top kingdom as it relates to idolatry. Because everybody is seeking to be celebrated. That's why you have like red carpet and shit like that. They want people to snap pictures and shit, ask for autographs, and they want to be celebrated. They want to be idolized. See? It says, because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he have also rejected thee from being king. And again, that applied to Saul, but it applies now because what's at stake? Rulership. So the witchcraft of the well-favored harlot and whore America is going to cause her to be burnt with fire. And in doing so, that's going to be a manifestation of the Lord rejecting his devil from being king. Because what's this going to provoke? The kingdom of heaven. The destruction of America is going to bring about the kingdom of heaven. See? This is the book of Exodus. What is that? Exodus. Is it Exodus 22? Yep. Exodus 22 and 18. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. See? And again, we read where America will be destroyed and visited because of her multitude of witchcraft, the well-favored harlot. And when you go into the law, which the Lord honored, he said, what? Even if a priest's daughter commit whoredom, you burn her with fire. So now, in no wise could America escape the wrath of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. See that? So the Lord is going to bring about this judgment. This is what we promote heavily over here, man. If you got a weak stomach, and that's spiritual, because your stomach represents your mind, you got a weak stomach, then in no wise can you digest or what Yahweh said, my flesh and blood. You're going to gag, man, because you're not going to be able to wrap your mind around the evils that the Most High himself devised. And remember, we went into, what was that, Psalms? Was that Psalms 104? We read, was touching the works of the Lord is done in wisdom. See? So the science behind the Lord's work, and in this case, the destruction, is to cleanse the earth. And if you got a problem with that, you got a weak stomach, then that means you're standing in opposition of the Most High. That's a dangerous place to be. So we will be considered those who we sympathize with the will of the Most High, understanding that it's wisdom. Oh yeah, it makes sense, Lord. Destroy this place. Because some people are marvel at that. What you mean you want this place to destroy? Where you going to go? Where aren't you here? But we agree so much with the Most High's plan that we say, look, destroy it, Lord, because first and foremost, we understand that act is going to bring about the deliverance in which we hope for. This is what we are spiritually invested in, deliverance, man. To partake in the favor that Yahweh will bring forth at his return. But we understand that salvation can only come by way of the destruction, which again is not some barbaric act. It's the Lord cleansing the earth. Let's get that definition again. And again, I just looked this up kind of randomly, and basically it's spiritual. See, yes, fire purifies physically by destroying. Man, come on, where they come up with that word? Even though we know there's a lot of words, right, that destroying is linked with, but you could have came up with something. I mean, come on, man. That word destroy is synonymous with our report, right? because they could have just used the word consume or burn. Yes, fire physically burn, you know, that word destroying there. See, melting away, we read that in Psalm 58, metal impurities, in this case, the sword, all right? It says, in what? Clearing ecological decay, culturally and spiritually, it serves as a universal symbol of transformation. The destruction is going to bring about the kingdom, judgment, and spiritual cleansing. The earth will be cleansed. See? It will be cleansed. This is what Yahweh Hashem Shah is promoting the earth. See, so let's close out right here in the book of Isaiah, 24th chapter. We'll start at the top. It says judgment on the earth. Oh, and that's the spirit. We looked up that word judgment, mashapat in the Hebrew. And one of the definitions is justice. You see? Or ordinance. So judgment is brought forth to establish justice and bring forth order in the earth. So this is a necessary evil, no pun intended. It says, behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty and maketh it waste. Right, this doesn't mean everybody on the planet gonna die. No, that's like a reset. See? If I got a cup, you got to go through the process of pouring out the cup, emptying it, cleansing it, and using the cup again. The earth will be used and will ultimately manifest what it was meant to, the purpose it was meant to serve, and that's to be a paradise. That word Adon in the Hebrew meaning paradise. Earth is a paradise which have been brought to its ruins by the so-called white man. You're going to see that as we read on. It says, and turneth it upside down and scattereth it abroad the inhabitants thereof. That's King's language. The inhabitants thereof is really those who are in power. So the Lord is going to turn them out of their place to make room for a new regime to come into power. See? It says, and it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury to him. Simply put, everybody gets it. On the soils of America, nobody will escape except the elect. And there's plenty of scriptures to support that. And in particular, Revelation, the 18th chapter, where 7,000 was killed in the earthquake. That number represents completion, and only a remnant was able to escape. See? Verse 3, it says the land, and that's singular, which different parts of the world are going to be hit, but predominantly the prominent spot of the Lord's judgment is America. So that's why it's the land. See? The land shall be utterly emptied and utterly spoiled, for the Lord hath spoken his word. See? So that's why the ministry has been sent forth. And basically, the word is echoing throughout the planet. Because the Lord is ready to spring into action. It says, the earth mourneth and fadeth away, the world languisheth and fadeth away, the haughty people of the earth do languish. The haughty people represents Esau, those who resume the power seat, which we know that word haughty goes into pride. So the proud people is languishing. Their time to rule is waning. See? And this is based upon time. Our scripture speaks about how a wise man would consider both time and judgment. Why? Because time is the biggest enemy to the kings of the earth. So eventually what happens? They'll begin to languish and fade away. And this is why the kingdom of heaven is heavy, because the Lord, the Most High, understand that rulership can only be perfected through immortality. So that's why the Lord is going to give us new bodies, we're going to have an everlasting, perpetual kingdom. See? Because if we didn't have that, then we'll fade away with time. See? It says the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof. Let's read this again. It says the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof. That word under goes into subjection. So under the powers that be, the earth is defiled. I mentioned certain things earlier, and this always is mentioned when we make our complaint before the Lord, when we present these epistles in the form of these videos and live streams. And the Spirit got on me to say this a while back. You could make a video or tutorial how to make a garment, and somewhere in that video, you're going to get on Esau. See? Why? Because the earth, our current status, our position right now is affected by the powers that be. And there's plenty of videos we on record highlighting the many offenses of the so-called white man. In this lesson, I mentioned certain: the air that you breathe, the food you consume, the water you drink, right? The relationships that you develop. You at work and you just a 5-minute conversation, you defile. You might not realize it. If you're not covered with the shield, the armor of the Most High, then the seeds get planted. Now you taking on a habit weeks down the road, you didn't even realize you picked up from some motherfucker you encountered, man. So-called information that's on display through these different agencies, universities, colleges, right? So-called higher learning. That shit defiled. It'll pollute you. So the earth is defiled under this man's watch. See, the earth is also defiled under the inhabitants thereof. It says, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. So they don't honor the law. Because if they did, then you wouldn't be sick. You wouldn't be sick. Oh, that's why Yahweh, when he spoke to the young man, it was a heavy moment in the scriptures. Yahweh encountered the young man. He said, good master, what could I do to be saved? And when you go into that account, the scriptures specify that guy was a ruler of men. Which when you go into that word ruler, it goes into teacher. So he wasn't just a regular guy. He was a guy that was pretty much going back and forth with the Lord. See? Then he said, well, how could I be saved? And the Lord said, look, if you want to be perfect, drop what you're doing and follow me. He said, but if you want to live, keep the laws. So the law, statutes, and commandments is not a burden. It's simply instructions to keep you alive. When you don't commit adultery, and then what? You read out a big percentages of diseases. Most of these sexual transmitted diseases, they come from adultery. Because of that woman's supposed to be with one man. See? And if that man have multiple women, they all with him. So there's no way, nothing can transpire there. Unless she creep off and do one of them women, they can't bring nothing into that union. But here in America, adultery is pushed. You out of the in crowd if you don't pop another man woman. That's a trophy for Jake, man, especially in all the nations. But that's one, what would you call it, blot on the screen, on the radar. That's one bump. There's a wide range of things that contributes to disease, pestilence. Oh, pork, unlawful food, shrimp, lobster, foods that's off limits. See? So Esau is guilty of that. See that? Again, it says, therefore, matter of fact, let me go back. It says the earth is also defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because why? They have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. So what's the penalty for all that? Let's read on. Therefore have the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are wet, burned. See? and few men left. That few men represents the few survivors in whom the Lord have wrote into the story to experience that salvation. That's what we fight for. But what you're going to be saved from? That fire, man, the earth being burned. See? So this is ultimately the science behind the destruction. See, the physician. This is what the Lord came up with to rid the earth of that unease, that disease. Or what's that? Sirach 10, the physician cutteth off the long disease, which represents Esau, the so-called white man. See that? So the fire in which the Lord is going to bring about will serve as that chief method. Again, as you can see the title of this lesson, this is going to be the chief method of execution because it's going to serve to be a very efficient form of judgment that's going to cleanse out, right? All the resemblance of Esau, all of his footprints, everything that he left behind is going to be all taken away. And the instrument in which the Lord is going to go about that would be that fire. So yeah, with that, I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the fellow laborers out there, and as always, you believers. To the next time, shalom.